Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Seventh Man Podcast. I'm Will Beverina. I run Dimer2K.com and write about the NBA 2K League.
And I'm Josiah Cohen, and I sort of write about the NBA 2K League for TSN and Operation Sports, but mostly I write about it for Dimer 2K.
We're back for episode 12. You can check out all of our previous episodes on the YouTube channel, and we have the past few episodes on iTunes and Podbean as well. As always, we want to thank everyone who has listened to any of the episodes so far. Support is always appreciated. A lot has happened in the past week, Josiah. Probably the most eventful week of the NBA 2K League since like what they revealed all the team logos back in December.
Yeah, it's been a crazy week. I might go with maybe maybe the first week of the playoffs is crazier, but that was very definitely concentrated. This was spread out a bit more, perhaps.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going for. Obviously, we had the expansion draft, which we previewed last week on the pod.
I keep forgetting
Uh,
about the expansion draft.
yeah,
So much has happened since then.
it's kind of easy to forget about it because there were three huge trades reported by the man himself, Josiah Cohen. We'll talk about those, um, all of that today. Starting with the expansion draft. Overall, Josiah, how did you think the teams did in the expansion draft on Wednesday?
I actually came up with some grades for them. So I would say probably I wasn't as sold on the Lakers draft as I thought, you know, from a personal perspective because I think they really did get exactly what they wanted in the draft. I think Moody and Control were their guys, and there's probably nothing wrong with that. I thought the Hawks getting shots was the smart, safe pick, and then Arsenal really fell to them at number 8. It'll be interesting to see how they put those two guys together on offense, but definitely talent wise, a good draft for them. Um, the Nets also got a phenomenal defensive front court. Nate, best defender available, probably. Also, Shockey, who I'm very, very high on. Um, and they get to foster a little New York City rivalry with taking Nate away from the Knicks. And then the Timberwolves, who threw the draft askew and they made it really interesting. So that made me give them a nice grade there. But I mean, getting Hood when no one really expected them to get Hood, that's definitely a big plus talent wise. And then they got Feast at number 6, which is definitely a steal.
Yeah, I don't think any team did bad here. I mean, you'd have to really screw this up, I think, to do bad in this expansion draft. But um, eh, I think every pick made sense, and you could kind of see what the teams were going for with their picks. So yeah, I mean, I agree with your grades that everyone did pretty well. And any surprises here for you, Josiah, on who was picked or who was left out, maybe?
I think the one serious surprise would have to be that Vert didn't get picked. I had him going in the first round of my mock draft. I know a few other people did too. Definitely a talented guy, but it's been a surprising offseason for him all around. The Warriors didn't protect him in the initial round of protections. I feel like by the time this podcast comes out, we'll have heard something more about Feast, shall we say? Excuse me, more about Vert. Maybe more about Feast. I don't know. But he's had an interesting offseason. I think he'll wind up in a good place. But I think that would be the most surprising thing, that he just really fell through the cracks. And definitely, I think the main culprit was the Minnesota trade, really throwing themselves and two other teams really off balance.
Yeah, I think that would be everyone's biggest surprise. We were sitting here when that eighth pick came up to Hawks Talon, and Vert was still on the board. We were like, oh, they're taking Vert, but they went with Arsenal. So, yeah, very surprising. Vert was the highest scoring guy in this expansion draft, was he not? Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think definitely the best player on that Warriors team, and uh, probably one of the best available bigs here, but no one deciding to go with him. So yeah, very surprising. What do you think about Shockey? getting into Brooklyn at seventh, the guy who came in the middle of the season for Pacers Gaming and getting picked up in the expansion draft.
As I said, I'm definitely a big fan of the Shockey pick. I think he's a very mature guy who really was able to come in a way that no one else did and make a huge impact in the middle of the season. And I think that it would not that pick would not be at all surprising to us if he'd put up that kind of production over the course of the entire season. We'll have to see if he can do that in year two. But simply based on his numbers, his maturity, and his ability to really get a grasp on the Pacers' offense, which it must be said is probably one of the better ones to walk into off the couch, as it were, because it's very more structured than a lot of other offenses. Um, and so I think it's a good pick. They have they're not going to have to worry too much about any potential chemistry or attitude problems. And as long as he can put up numbers over the course of the entire season, then we're going to look back on this and say, "Wow, I can't believe he fell to number 7."
Yeah, the attitude thing is a very good point. I saw Kurt and Gartrell, who drafted for the Nets, on Twitter saying something, when they went to the games during the season, they were watching guys, how do they react to winning? How do they react to losing? Their body language, how they communicate, are they fighting with their teammates? They said they were paying a lot of attention to that, and it kind of shows in their picks here. Um, it's hard to pick two better people, not players but people, than Nate Collins Shockey. So yeah, I'd say they went in and achieved what they set out to do. Josiah, looking at this expansion draft, who do you think had the best one?
I think the Wolves had the best one, T Wolves Gaming, because they went out and procured something that was not available to them at their number 3 selection, and then they doubled back and got a good piece in its own right, in his own right, but one that also happens to fit, I think, very, very well on the court, especially with the guy they went out and got. They traded for Hood for the third pick in the expansion draft. That's a elite scorer in the NBA 2K league that they got for the third pick, guy who wasn't available otherwise. And then they got one of the best defenders in the league, and someone who has a well honed pick and pop game, um, fits so well. Is doesn't need to shoulder the scoring burden, but can really focus on defense and being a complementary piece on offense. And so those two good picks, and the sheer fact that the Wolves made the draft more exciting, was especially to those of us on Twitter, was simply a huge factor in why I think they had the best draft.
Yeah, I think plenty of people would agree with you there. To have something that no other expansion team has, which is a player who's protected and one of the best scorers in the league flat out, I mean, it's really a coup, I think, for
It's
this
two first
Timberwolves
round
team.
picks. I'm sorry to cut over you, but uh, more more vindication comes to mind. It's really two first round picks they got, um, because Hood was a first round pick, um, and Feast, the 76ers, offered a first round pick to try and trade to get him back. So they really walked away with two conclusively first round picks. Um, and so that no other team, in my opinion, did that.
Yeah, I think Minnesota can be very happy with what they walked away with here, um, and they're set up pretty well. That I mean, it's hard to tell because there's still a lot to be done with this entry draft and getting a solid coach and implementing a system, but they look pretty well set up, I think, to do some damage in season two, as do all these teams in the expansion draft. In all honesty, I don't think any team is. It's hard to imagine at this point any of these teams being particularly awful. with the start they have. Um, the expansion draft, of course, wasn't the most exciting thing to happen. We talked about it a little bit. Uh, Trade window opened on Thursday, Josiah, but there were some reported trades, and by reported trades, I mean reported by you. First one being, of course, the third pick in the expansion draft for Hood, which ended up sending Larry to Cavs Legion. We already talked about Hood on the Timberwolves. What do you think about Larry on the Cavs? Did they do well to trade Hood for Larry?
I think they look at this one more from a, all right, we did well, in terms of final result this season, but I think we want to approach it a different way this year. And so they went out and got a guy they really liked, and I think everyone really likes, a great guy in O'Larry, who I'm 100% sure is going to be ready and raring to go for season two. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And this gives them a chance to really make the team in a way they want it made. It'll be interesting to see how he pairs up with Sick and God of 2K, whom they retained at the cost of a second round pick. So it's definitely going to be a lot of defense. Larry might get more of a scoring burden this time around. If they move Sick back to point guard, that could be a really, really interesting pick and roll duo of two guys who are sort of familiar with both positions. Almost taking the Colt and Moody pick and roll to the next level. So I think it's an interesting, and you know what, I think in terms of trades, everyone has to be happy with these trades because for a long time it was sort of like a fantasy football league, and everyone was distrusting everyone else, not willing to make any trade. So, if only again for the sheer fact that it definitely spices up the league and provides a lot more excitement, um, as long as teams feel like they're building the team in the way they want to be building the team, then yeah, I like the trade for the Cavs.
Yeah, one interesting thing about this for the Cavs is that they seemingly have three big men now. Uh, some questions about whether Larry is going to stay on big in the league. I believe in 2K19 Pro Am he's been playing on a pure sharp, so we'll see how that works out. There's plenty to be said about getting guys that fit together. Uh, what do you think about this? Maybe this is a strategy by the Cavs just to acquire as much talent as you can and then figure it out later.
I don't know about that. I mean, I think this just had to be someone they really wanted because they had a few other targets. If Larry had gone second to the Knicks, it would have been someone else. It would have been a guard. Um, and so I think they do have a plan in mind for next season already. And I think that's pretty clear by the fact that they're willing to retain God of 2K for a second round pick. And it's not entirely out of the question that they retain another guy at the cost of a first round pick, a late first round pick, but a first round pick nonetheless. And so they were happy, I think, for the most part, with the guys that they had, and they really wanted to keep building that culture. And so I think this is very much about continuing to build, not just trying to reset entirely for season two.
Okay. Second trade, Josiah, was probably the biggest one announced so far. MVP finalist Ramo of Pistons GT getting shipped to Pacers Gaming for the fourth pick in the entry draft. Huge get for the Pacers, Josiah.
Huge, 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 huge. Um, yeah, a humongous acquisition by Cody Parent, NBA 2K Lab, and the Pacers. This guy was an MVP candidate, and he was an MVP candidate both for his offense and for his defense, because the Pistons weren't exactly the highest scoring team in the league last season, um, and look, I'm not sure that even at number four, you're going to be able to find a talent of this caliber. This is you're getting a proven MVP candidate who was good before and after the patch. who was the face of his team, who was the offensive and defensive leader of his team, and now you're putting him on a team with Swizzer, probably the best pure sharp in the league throughout the course of last season, and Wolf, who was great in the league and who is absolutely filthy so far on 2K19. So I think this was a trade the Pacers were very willing and happy to make. Um, I mean, the Pistons have to be trusting their player development and scouting system to try and get someone at number 4. They also retained Joseph the Truth at the cost of a second round pick. So there's more that I think there's more to it than a simply talent focused trade. But from a talent perspective, the Pacers have to be very, very happy with what they've acquired.
Yeah, that last thing you mentioned, I meant to say this before we started talking about these trades, but the most important thing we can tell you here is to not take these trades at face value. There are a lot of things going on behind the scenes that lead to these trades. But yeah, I mean, if you're the Pacers, you make this trade every single time, especially with the uncertainty of the entry draft. I mean, you absolutely take the surefire MVP finalist instead of you're probably not going to get someone better in this entry draft. It'd be really hard. Maybe it can happen. It'd be really hard. I will say for the Pacer or sorry, the Pistons at least, um, they definitely got a better return than the next trade we'll talk about soon. But still must sting a little bit to have to give up Ramo and yeah, for the Pacers, they're looking pretty good with those three players you mentioned. They kind of have everything now. They have that inside scoring. They have that outside scoring. They have a lockdown defender and guy who showed his versatility and that he's an absolute star in this league. And they're just a couple pieces, and I think they're going to look a lot better in season two than they did in season one, and that's saying plenty. Um,
And well,
for,
I'm going to jump in because they could still retain someone too at the cost of only a third round pick because they had Shockey go in the entry draft, excuse me, the expansion draft, and so to retain another player would only cost them a third round pick. And I thought they had a number of really good and interchangeable, almost big men throughout the year. So if they wanted to take a shot at keeping Tucker locks up, it would they'd have to make sure Ramo was agreeable to going down to power forward, and but he would definitely be handed the burden of the scoring role in terms of big men. And if the meta stays the way it is, and Wolf sticks on a lock at a 3 probably, then the Pacers could be in for a great season this year.
yeah, the fact that they haven't announced anything yet, I don't know. I figured maybe Tucker locks up would be absolutely a guy you pull the trigger on for a third round pick. Um, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe they're still trying to sort things out. I'm not
My
sure.
my question is, Ramo got that Pacers gaming swag pretty quickly. You,
Yeah.
you see all his Twitter stuff has been changed. He's wearing a Pacers gaming shirt and he's got the hat. He got that pretty quickly. That trade wasn't one of the earlier agreed upon ones. So they put some money into the quick FedEx shipping or something. It's good stuff. I like it. I like it though.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, Pacers definitely looking like a dangerous team. Third trade of last week, Josiah, also a big one. Dayfry of Mavs Gaming going to the Wizards for a first round pick, 14th overall.
Yeah, yeah, he did. I'm trying to think of what I can say about this trade. The the Wizards got a really good player. They
Yes.
got a really, really good player who plays already with Shump, who was the Wizards already really, really good player um, from last season. Don't forget about JT either. Um, this is a pretty good way to roll into the season. They could bring back Insanity at the cost of a second round pick if they wanted for some secondary ball handling and scoring. Um, this trade gives them a lot of options. I think again, this is a trade you have to pull the trigger on if
Oh
you're the
yeah.
Wizards because you're not sure that you're going to get a day fry with the 14th overall pick. So definitely a good trade by them. Good trade by the Mavs too, in a sense. Bad one for the Mavs in a sense, but really a trade that I will say that look, they were making this trade. They weren't hanging on to Dave Fry for season two. I'm not going to say why, but Dave Fry was gone as soon as he was protected, and the Wizards won the sweepstakes. They had the higher first round pick than another team that offered the Mavs, and so they got Dave Fry.
Yeah. Still a little bit surprising to me that, you know, they could only get 14th for Day Fry. I don't know though. There have been some debates on Twitter about whether Day Fry or Dimes was better on the Mavs, but we won't get into that. Huge get for the Wiz. Like I said, like I said for the Ramo trade, I would probably make this trade every single time, right? 14th for Day Fry, just because the uncertainty of the entry draft and you're not quite sure what you're gonna get. Yeah, definitely take the surefire thing over the uncertainty. So, and um, something that was maybe in the cards a bit. Dave Fry used to play with Dimes in Pro Am, I believe. No longer does for 2K19. Plays with Boo Painter on Make It Happen. So they're developing some chemistry there already, and looks like a pretty dangerous team. I expect JT to have a much more expanded role in 2K19, assuming the league doesn't take or doesn't go towards what we saw in season one and what the Wizards were doing with that shot creating slasher. Um, and they're just maybe a secondary ball handler, and I don't know, maybe another kind of versatile guy who can play a couple different positions. And they're looking pretty good. Made the playoffs last season. They look pretty good to make the playoffs this season. So, um, big get for the Wizards. Now, Josiah, been a lot of talk on Twitter about, big threes and everything like that, and who the best team is now. Uh, where would you put, this is super early and rosters aren't even complete, but where would you put the Pacers and the Wizards, in your way too early power rankings?
They'd be pretty high. I think the Pacers especially, because I've always had a soft spot for the Pacers because they ran actual plays.
Yeah.
Um, but I big threes are not the formula necessarily to success. I think the most obvious big three from last season went out in the first round of the playoffs to another team whose big three you know you can't really even decide upon. Um, but that being said, there's a lot to like about these teams, big three in particular. Got to see how they add things in the draft. A big part of how the Heat especially got to the finals, they had players who were willing to play multiple positions. Even Hotshot, who wound up pretty locked into the shot creating slasher at small forward, he played three positions on the season, and a lot of their guys moved around, willy nilly, not willy nilly, but week to week, in a sense, when it was required. So these guys are all guys that seem pretty locked in on their position. So it's going to be interesting to see what the teams can get to complement and supplement that. And look, it's a pretty talented big threes, but big threes are not guaranteed to be a success, right? You know, these neither of these teams made it further than the first round. Obviously, the Wizards went out pretty quickly to the 76ers, who didn't exactly have the most cut and dried big three. So it's about more than big three talents. That's how I'm going to hedge my bets on this one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd agree. I mean, that's why I said way too early, and why I said that. There are a lot of things to still be done here. Um, I guess if I had to say something, I would say I'd probably rank the Pacers higher than the Wizards, um, just because of the coaching advantage, and I think they definitely have a bit more talent than the Wizards
Well,
right now.
throwing shades at Pat there.
I I mean, Cody Perrin is just no, not really. It's just Cody Perrin is that good, I think. I mean,
I mean, yeah, but the Wizards made the playoffs.
they did, but I mean, the Pacers just didn't figure themselves out, and I don't know. The Wizards were a little slow to adjust sometimes, I think.
I agree. I'm gonna say that they're both good coaches in their own right, both very deserving of their um, extension status. Obviously, Cody, director of esports as well. He's there for the long haul. Patrick got an early extension, well deserved one, of course. Um, they're both good coaches. Both
Yeah,
good coaches.
yeah. I mean, I'm just saying I've only heard players talk about one team's off-ball screens. That's the Pacers, but you know,
I feel like I talk about the Pacers off ball screens a lot.
you do. You love off-ball screens, so yeah. And
Do
uh
them. Makes no sense not to.
no, I absolutely agree with you. I absolutely agree. Um Anything else to talk about here, Josiah? Talk about the expansion draft, talk about all the trades.
By the time this podcast comes out, there may have been more.
That's
Um,
true.
Trade window does not end until October 10th. I thought when the windows were announced, I thought, oh man, that's a pretty short window. Not much room in there. And now all of a sudden, there are like 10 days left, and I'm thinking, man, can we just get to October 11th so I can get a bit of a break? Um, but it's not how it works. So keep an eye on Dimer, especially over the next 2 days. Um, yeah, so I don't know when this podcast is going out, so I'm not going to say more. But we're not done yet. We're not done yet.
Yes, we have you covered on Dimer. Josiah has been working the lines tirelessly, reporting all these trades before they're officially announced. Um, Thankfully, you haven't messed up a report yet, or else we'd look very bad. So, thank you, Josiah.
I try and make sure I know what I'm talking about. There, there was one. We're 5 years from now, we'll write a whole article about the touch and go moments of one of these. You know which one I'm talking about, but
Yes.
that was some of the craziest 10 minutes I've ever had in in my almost 10 months now on the NBA 2K League beat.
Yeah. It's been fun. It's been frantic. Um, and you know, myself, as someone who just enjoys the league, has been thoroughly entertained by everything happening, and the players and the management all seem to be entertained as well by all this. Um, so it's been fun, and like I said, we have you covered on Dimer. So I guess that's it then, right, Josiah?
Yeah, it's all fun and games. I'm not looking to hurt the league in any way. I think they would reach out to me, and they should reach out to me if they thought I was. That's obviously not what I'm trying to do. I think um, it's important to have the fourth estate um, providing news, and I think it drums up interest for the league. Because people want to see this kind of stuff, and the fact that Larry got traded for a former, you know, top scorer. That's on ESPN, and so I think the league is definitely should definitely be happy about this. And I think it's just really contributes more toward the legitimacy and overall authenticity of the league.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. This is the stuff people crave. They want to see the reports. They want to see the rumors. It just makes things more interesting, and you see it with the NBA as well. Um, people just want this stuff. So
Right, right. We don't know where Jimmy Butler is ending up yet, but we've gotten a week full of Jimmy Butler coverage. That's given lots of different websites lots and lots of clicks. And it's drummed up interest for the NBA in the waning days of the offseason and now into the very beginning of the preseason. So
yeah, it's a long way to season 2 and the combine and all that. So we gotta keep ourselves busy. Um, Josiah, tell the people where can they find you on Twitter.
find me on Big Blue Bird at Josiah Cohen 13. Have I said that on this podcast?
Yes, you said
Yeah,
it
I said it
last week.
last week. I Time has been strange of the last week, so um, yeah, at Josiah Cohen 13, and also you should definitely follow at Dimer 2K.
Yeah. If you want to follow me, at Will Beverina, Beverina. Follow Dimer2K at Dimer2K. Check out Dimer2K.com. We have all the information about the expansion draft, trades, rumors, all of that kind of thing.
Will
Really,
has added like 60 followers in the past half a week. It's remarkable. Such clout.
I'm Josiah is close to 1,000 followers on his own, and wrote an article for the league website. So lots of clout. This man may go Hollywood on me soon enough, folks. So
I'll join Moody in LA, and then you can say you've been roommates with and podcast co-hosts with two Hollywood people,
it'd be
but we're not there yet.
we're not there yet. Close, but not there yet.
League sources reporting Will Beverina at the Athletic.
Yeah, I doubt that one. All right, well, that's everything for today. Thanks for listening, everyone. Especially if you listened all the way through. Support is very appreciated. Thank you and goodbye.